Welcome back. This is the Scaling Secrets podcast. Brett Gilliland is here from growwithelite.com. Now, Brett is the founder and CEO of Elite Entrepreneurs. They are a company that specializes in giving $1 million plus business owners the knowledge, processes, and tools to grow to $10 million and beyond. And Brett was involved in the foundation work of purpose, values, and mission at Infusionsoft. He facilitated their strategic planning process for many years. And so, like we said, Brett's focus is on this $1 to $10 million range. So we're going to find out what his secrets are and what we should do. So, Brett, glad to be speaking with you.
I'm thrilled to be here with you today, Robert. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for showing up. And we're about to have a good time. And so we gave a little bit of an introduction about you and about your kind of expertise and your focus. But is there anything that we left out or anything that you think just really requires some extra attention today?
Well, I'd love to give an analogy, okay? Because I think business owners can relate to this. So we start out, if you've ever ridden a multi-gear bicycle, you start out in a gear that's comfortable and that gets the bike moving. Pretty soon, though, that bike is moving. It's giving the output that gear enables. And if you pedal faster, you might get a little bit more output from that gear. But it's not until you shift gears that you can actually give less input, less pedaling, and get more yield out of that bicycle in a higher gear. Or it might be lower. I'm not a bicycle expert. But the point is that next gear that you're supposed to go to enables you to go further without as much energy. That same idea happens in our businesses. And there's this really cool pattern on the ones and threes of revenue from 100,000 to 300,000, 300,000 to million, million to 3 million, 3 million, and so on, that if we don't learn to shift gears, we're going to get stuck in that gear and we could be pedaling like crazy, hoping to get more yield out of that thing. And we just will get burned out. So it's not working harder every time. It's knowing exactly what you need to do to shift to the next gear.
I love that analogy of the gear shifting because it's so easy to do things in the wrong order or to implement the wrong advice that's meant for like 5 levels ahead, right? So it's like when you're first starting out, you just need to get something going in that proof of concept and those first few sales and build the list and make the website and all those things. And then it's time to switch gears, and then it's time to scale, and then it's time to delegate, and then it's time to build your team. And so I love that analogy. And you remind me of, there was a time when me and a friend were bikes and we were chased by these two guys on skateboards. And I was pedaling as fast as I could. And I was worried at first that they were going to catch us because you jump on a skateboard, it has like one speed, right? And it's sort of fastish. But then when the bike kind of picked up speed and we shifted a couple of times and we outran those guys. And so you're kind of bringing back a little bit of panic and fight or flight, but maybe that's good, right? As business owners to have that sense of urgency and say, okay, well, if I've been struggling, if things have been, maybe they're supposed to be hard, but if they've been too hard, then maybe I need to implement a different strategy or switch gears. And so your focus, what we said, is from the sort of $1 million range to get to that $10 million kind of next level. And so what does need to change? Like, I'm sure like many things were done right in order to get a business to $1 million, but what needs to be thrown out? What needs to be added to continue on?
Great question, Robert. And to that $1 million level, I'm going to generalize grossly here, okay? But to that $1 million level, roughly, you might have 6, 8, 10 employees at this point. We've figured out largely how to get and serve customers, right? We got that thing off the ground. We know how to get some customers. We know how to serve them. So we have a steady operation going. That's the job of that 300,000 to $1 million gear, is to get that steady operation, get and serve more customers, right? Like that's it. Now, as we continue to scale to 1 to 3 million and then 3 to 10 million, we still need to figure out how to get and serve a growing number of customers. But that's not the key success factor to continue to grow. The challenge with many business owners is that in that 300,000 to $1 million range, the business owner himself or herself, sometimes it's a husband and wife pair or partner, whatever, those key people are so integrally business, right? To get and serve the customers, they're so involved. That's what I'm trying to say. They're just like mixed in the machine that the business can only grow as far as they can personally be involved in getting it there. So as soon as they run out of arm stretch space to hold it all together, they sort of tap out and they hit a ceiling. So what they have to do is they have to go from learning and doing things like learning and doing marketing and learning and doing sales and learning and doing customer fulfillment at a larger scale. They have to get out of learning and doing mode, and they have to start leading. So they have to start building a team who can do the learning and doing. And that leadership, that first leadership shift is really hard for business owners, and why many of them get stuck in this 1 to 2 million range. They just hit a ceiling and they never grow past that because they're just trying to run faster on the treadmill and they're not making progress.
And why is this leadership idea so difficult? Is it a matter of ego, like no one else can do it as well as me? Or is it that they don't have the patience, like the frustration of like documenting and teaching someone else and having someone else take over? Just like, why is it so dang difficult to go from I'm in the machine to I'm out of the machine?
Fantastic question, Robert. You got lots of insights in your questions. So, yes, to the ideas that you shared, those are definitely involved. Let me use another analogy because I think it just visualizes sometimes. If you think about how connected a business owner is from an identity standpoint with the business, not just the operations, but the identity. Like my identity as the business owner is at one completely with the business early on. And what we have to do, it's a little bit like separating Siamese twins. We've got to say, these are separate entities. We have a business owner who has dreams and hopes and wishes, right? All these goals personally, but they also have dreams for the business. But we got to separate those out. And the business deserves to have life on its own. And I'm not advocating for getting rid of business owners. And I'm saying they should all become, passive investors in their business and hire, a professional manager or something like that. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying we have to separate the identity, because sometimes letting go means almost like hurting my own identity. It's like, whoa, I'm doing this to myself if I let somebody else take this. So ego is definitely tied up in it. A fear that all the careful work that I did to get it to this place will somehow be undermined, or it'll all come crumbling down if I let somebody else try to serve that customer or somebody else run that process. They're not going to quite do it the right way, or I know how to do it without it messing up. And so we have this fear of the house of cards kind of tumbling if I entrust that to somebody else. So between the ego about my own identity and those endorphins that happen when I make the sale and when I get that customer happy, like there's something real to that. And then the fear of somebody else wrecking what I built, those two things make it really hard to let go.
And thank you for putting a label on those things and helping us understand, because you're making me think of like when I come back from a trip, from a conference, and I'm thinking, I want to be back in my own space as fast as possible, right? I want to get to my car in the parking lot and be at my car that I haven't sat in a week. And I want to get home and get to the house that I'm used to, in the office I'm used to, and all these kind of things that are like, they're just things, but they become part of my surroundings, my identity. And it can be painful to sell a car you've had for 10 years or sell a house you've had for 15 years and then have to jump into some other things in your space. And so a business is similar, right? And it's not like you're selling the business, but you're maybe handing off these day-to-day operations to someone else. And you're just kind of giving me the little bit of flashbacks like that of just the potential pain of unpeeling some of those kind of identity factors there. So you're saying that we need to get over that kind of identity concept, and then also get over the fear, get over that idea that I'm so worried that in the future I'll look back and this will be the day when it all started to come crashing down because I started handing things off to others. And so where do you think these business owners who are in this transition process need to really focus? Is it a matter of like when they hand things off, like pay extra close attention, or just how do they overcome this fear and this identity problem? What needs to be done to get them through?
Well, it actually starts with clarity and alignment. And what I mean by that is your number one job as a leader is to set the vision. That's a Jim Collins idea. Maybe he's not even the first to say it, but I believe it strongly. Our number one responsibility, especially at a 7-figure business range, is to set the vision. Everybody on the team needs to know why we're doing this. They need to be excited about why we're doing it. They need to know what values we share together, how we operate with one another, what's the standard of expectation around our behavior. And they need to know the specific destination oriented mission that we're up to right now. Not we're doing all of these things broadly or generally, but here's where we're going, and we're going to get there by the end of this time period. Like that kind of declaration, that's what I mean by mission. And so getting clear on purpose, values, and mission is what we mean by setting the vision. And it's your number one responsibility. And it's the first thing to be able to step away from that, the business is my identity, and to have less fear about handing it off. Because when everybody's clear, now they can start to operate the way that you would. They would say, okay, Robert's been doing this for however long he's been doing it. And this is our vision. Robert's done a great job of enrolling me in a process to co-create a compelling vision. And now I know from my seat the way that Robert would think about this. He'd probably go, is this aligned with our purpose? Does it fit with our values? Is this the work we need to do? Of all the work we could do, is this work highly important for us to achieve that mission that we're up to together? And we start to put in these filters for how people can think and own things in the roles that you give them. So that's the first thing, is to get total clarity on those foundational pieces so that we can build something on it that won't be shaky.
I find that very powerful and helpful to get that vision figured out and figure out the basics and those fundamentals. And what would you say is sort of the work or the time frame involved with this? Is it, because you've worked with all these companies, would you say this is like something that it takes a few months to figure out, or it takes a year of repeating or revisiting every week, or just what's the kind of time factor from, say, someone's on this podcast right now saying like, okay, I need to figure out this vision and pass it to my team. Like, about how long would someone take to write it out, get clear on it, refine it? And then how long would someone take to kind of continuously pass it to their team?
Well, if you do it the wrong way, it doesn't take very long, because you as a business owner can go, at the top of the mountain, get all the ideas and come back and try to share with everybody, okay, I did it. Here's the vision. But that doesn't enlist or enroll their complete buy-in, their engagement. And so what you have to do, which is a little slower, but way more effective, is to pull in the key members of your team that can help put words to these core things. So purpose, like, pretty realistically, you can get in a 1 hour meeting, set the stage a little bit, talk about what we're trying to do with this purpose idea, and you can come up with a pretty good draft leaving that meeting. So it doesn't take long to come up with a draft of the purpose. Values, on the other hand, can take a little bit of time if you haven't done some of this work before, because it's not that we're trying to invent who we're going to become. We're just trying to get total clarity and put words to. We're trying to articulate what is the unique set of shared behaviors or shared belief-centered behaviors that we exhibit around here. And I'll give you an example. Our number one value at Elite Entrepreneurs is we genuinely care. 3 words: we genuinely care. Well, to us, that's the label, and the description behind that helps us understand what that really means. Okay, and so it says we listen to and care for people beyond what's typically expected in a business relationship. We love to leave people and things better than we found them. Okay, that's what we genuinely care means to us. Now, we have 7 of these values. They each have a succinct label, and they got a longer description. And then we hire, we lead, and we fire to these values. These are our shared way of being. So you're not going to come out of a 1 hour brainstorming session with a really good of values that has those behavioral descriptions to them. So what I would recommend is that you set up lunch, maybe on a Friday, once a week, with the right group of your team. I'm sorry, I might be going long on this, Robert, but here's the point.
Okay.
If you get the right group of people together to work on this, and you spend 4 or 5 weeks in a row just iterating, talking about, like, here's all the values we each have individually in our lives, and we sort of start to whittle those down to, here are the core values that we share here at our business. And with those core values, we're going to, like, everything we do from here on out is going to be consistent with these behaviors. So between the purpose, which is the exciting why we get up every Monday morning and are like, we get to do this again because it has real meaning. And then the values, now we have that shared identity that the business has on its own, separate from the business owner, right? And so if you draft a set of values over, let's call it 4 to 6 weeks, and then just leave it as a draft for the next quarter or 2, just practice living that and say, does this feel right? And there's probably going to be some adjustments, but by the end of a quarter or two, if you've been really intentional at building out these short labels with behavior, with more extended behavior descriptions, by the end of 6 months, you've got a really solid values-based foundation. So purpose-driven, values-based within 1 to 2 quarters, very realistic. And the mission doesn't have to take a ton of time, but it's probably a couple meetings, right? An initial drafting session, then everybody goes off and thinks about it and works it. And then the final session, we can say, let's tune that up. But now we have clarity about why, who, or how, and the specific what that we're up to. With that vision, that's what we mean by setting the vision. Now you can build all kinds of stuff on top of it, and we're a complete, solid foundation with that.
Wonderful. And so thank you for laying that out. And I think that's very doable, especially kind of hearing about how it's possible and getting almost like a step-by-step plan of getting this created. And, you hear about these sorts of things of writing down your vision and your values and your purpose, and how when you have that declared, then suddenly that workplace, and it weeds out maybe the bad apples of the bunch. And then when it comes time for new hires, and like say if some new hire finds this on your website and they can kind of get an idea of what your company's about, and it goes both ways. When you're looking at that new hire, you can tell if they match with that. And so it seems like this is all in service of kind of building this new identity, because beforehand the identity was defaulting on that business owner. And so we want to like build this new thing, that way it doesn't all drop on them. And then also something that I'm kind of making a mental note of is that you're mentioning this idea of buy-in. And it seems like that's so important, of when you have like software and there's a way things should be done, or you have some idea, it's not just enough to spout the facts and figures, but get people invested in this idea and kind of do the refining, the tuning up, the back and forth. So I find that very powerful. And so since this is the Scaling Secrets podcast, and it's a podcast, we love to hear some stories. And I know that you have some from Infusionsoft and other places where you kind of taken companies from you said from 1 to 3 million and then 3 to 10 million. So what do you have to share with us just about maybe like a story with an aha or so about getting to this next level?
I'll share one. The names of the business owners are Eric and Janet Sparrow. Eric's a third grade teacher, I believe, elementary school teacher. He starts making soy-based candles on the side out of his house, right? Just in his garage. Soy-based, burns clean. It's not like the paraffin wax that's more harmful to the environment. So he lives in Iowa. There's all these soybeans everywhere. It burns cleaner than the paraffin wax. So he starts making and selling soy-based candles on the side of his house. He's a teacher. He's trying to make some extra money. So he gets it to $1 million in revenue. He and his wife just out of hustle and doing the thing. And then he and his wife are little experience where we teach, and they got lit up. The idea of purpose, of saying it's not, I mean, they had a built-in purpose, but they hadn't articulated it well. They hadn't done the identity separation between the sparrows and their business. And so it was like we breathed life into that business in a new way during that time. And he went on to scale his business to 3 into 10 million to him last year. And he was well beyond 20, crossing 30 million. And this is candles, right? And it doesn't matter if it's candles, doesn't matter if it's software, doesn't matter if it's services. When you get that kind of clarity, and oh, by the way, as Janet, who was an occupational therapist, finally quit the job and said, the full-time job to come do this full-time. And together they built a really powerful team, great culture. They now have over 250,000 square feet of manufacturing facilities in rural Iowa. They're employing all these people, providing for these communities. It's incredible, but it would not have happened if this little spark of purpose hadn't come into existence as part of that process of getting clear. Once they got that clarity around purpose, values, mission, they've been able to scale an amazing team and build a great business. There's lots of stories like that, but I like that one because elementary school teacher, occupational therapist, these are not business people, right? Now, it doesn't mean they're dumb. They're some of the smartest people I've ever met, and some of the best and humblest people as well. But they learned how to do this, and can, just like you learned marketing, just like you learned sales, you can learn how to be a business building CEO. So we want to go from chaos and confusion to clarity and confidence. And we want to take you from scrappy founder to capable business building CEO. And it's possible. I've seen it many, many times.
I love it. Amazing. It's time to grow up, right? It's time to flying by the seat of our pants and figure out this purpose, values, and mission. And so, and also, it seems like it's really important to get it in writing, get clarity, declare it, because we've all experienced this weird situation where in your mind and your imagination changing, even though you don't realize it. You say, well, I could imagine like a Hollywood blockbuster, or I could imagine how such and such conversation with a friend would go, but once it actually happens, once you get it in writing or get it in recording or video, then now it actually takes shape. And it's amazing how in your brain everything's so perfect, but it plays tricks on you. It's built on sand, not on an actual solid foundation. And you always hear about that sort of advice of like, if you don't have a plan, if you don't have a goal, then you'll just end up in all these random places. But so few of us think about, well, what about this purpose, values, and mission, and writing that actually down. That way you can get somewhere. And I love that story because candles, right? Amazing how that can scale and grow. And so as we're beginning to wind down our conversation here, Brett, it's so fun to get personal. So do you have anything personal to share with us as far as like your own failures, your own struggles, or just like some kind of difficulty that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, and I'll share it in the context of the story at Infusionsoft. That company is now called Keep, and we grew from 7 figures to 100 million. Okay, so this scaling thing, 1 to 3, 3 to 10, 10 to 30, by the way, 30 to 100. Each time we tripled size, there was a new gear, a new stage that we had to figure out. And even knowing that we needed to have this really powerful culture that could endure the growing, and we knew we had to hire, lead, and fire to this purpose, values, and mission, right? That was the way we needed to do it. Even knowing all this and being as intentional as we were, sometimes we let the wrong people in the door. And especially a few times we let the wrong leader. And if you have the wrong leader, now you're starting to put cracks in that foundation that you so carefully put together. So the failure where we tripped up was getting too many of the wrong people in, and it started to wreak havoc on this amazing culture we had built. We had a top 25 best small workplace in America recognition a couple years in a row. And then we started to have some of these wrong people. We lost that momentum. We lost the best place to work status. Like we just started coming down, and it's failure to keep the wrong people out and preserve that core identity of purpose and values, mission. That was partly to blame. There are other things that we don't have time for on this podcast, but I would have done 2 things differently looking back. I would have guarded the front door even more carefully than we did. And then I also would have developed leaders faster. At some point, you can't develop leaders fast enough. You can't outgrow the capability of your collective leadership. And we were having to go outside too often for leaders because we just didn't have it for them built inside.
Wonderful. Those are amazing insights, especially this idea. And you hear that it's very like a modern idea, right? How the old leadership thoughts were, I need to bark orders, but then the new way of leadership is to train other leaders and empower other people. That way your team all kind of works together and it's not just all relying on one person to get it done. And so this is all wonderful for us to think about as far as actually getting things done on time and scaling the business and avoiding all these different pitfalls. And as you said, there's just so many big ideas that we can't necessarily unpack on a podcast, but that's why we have this bite-sized window of time, right? So if someone likes what you have to say, they get a good taste of Brett and they say, man, I need to know more about what he has to say of growing from 1 million to 10 million and so on. How can someone take the next step with you? How can they find out about your podcast, your website, your services, etc.? What's the call to action?
Thank you, Robert. You mentioned right at the front end of our time together, our website is growwithelite.com. So all spelled out, growwithelite.com, growwithelite.com. Our podcast is called The Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast. And we got 100 plus episodes of that. And some of those are me sharing some thoughts, but most of those, the vast majority, are business owners or 8-figure business owners thinking back on that time in that 1 to 3 million stage and like, what were some of those lessons I learned and what was key? And So tons of great stories, great examples from people like Eric Sparrow. He was one of my guests on there. Anyway, a lot of good stuff. Thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you too, Brett. So growwithelite.com and the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast and podcasters like you and me know that there's kind of different levels of awareness where you might be, right? If you're someone who's like a stressed out, burnt out business owner, this podcast can be the perfect thing for you, or even just to kind of stay energized and stay immersed in all this thought process. Instead of listening to the satellite radio or reality TV in the background, why not have a podcast like this in the background? That way you can keep those brain gears turning and you can focus on what you need to in order to scale your business. And so as we're wrapping up, winding down our conversation here, Brett, I always love to ask guests about a quote or lesson that they think has been really helpful to them that they can pass on. That way we can really leave our audience with something fun and profound. So what comes to mind for you as far as a quote or lesson?
We had the privilege of spending 2 half-day sessions with Jim Collins one time in his lab in Boulder, Colorado. And one of the things that he taught, we learned a ton from him, but one of the things that he taught is that B players are taking time from the people and things that you love. And we settle too often for people who aren't pulling their weight, who aren't really demonstrating ownership, who aren't good. And we sort of justify it for a number of reasons. But every time we do that, it's taking time and energy from the people you love and the things you like to be doing.
Okay, so it's time to be better. Don't let those B players take that away from you. And the very step is to go to Brett's website, growwithelite.com. And thank you very much, Brett, for stopping by and blowing our minds today.
Loved being here. Thanks, Robert.
All right, recording.